and it was all over the news.
Have you ever listened to Sean Ryan?
I won that and then just moved to Fern.
But I didn't know you were an educator.
And it was hard when you have a full-time job.
Do you think there was a lot of Republicans that changed parties?
And I wouldn't want my worst enemy out there.
They do all of it.
And they literally put a circle around my house in Valley Station.
We'll listen to podcasts from YouTube. I thought everybody had like
I'll listen
Spotify or the
Joe Rogan or
Sean Ryan.
Dave Ramsey. Who else I've been listening to?
Have you ever listened to Sean Ryan?
No.
Oh, he has great podcasts. He's right up there with Joe Rogan. He's got really good people on there. He had somebody on there the other day talking about the truth behind the Charlie Kirk assassination. Like it's really good. You ought to look him up.
Sean Ryan.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, you're hot on mic, hot on both cameras. I'll be in about 30 minutes checking on you. Nice time.
How much
Thanks,
editing
Austin.
do you do?
They do all of it.
You actually edit out things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do like 2 episodes a month, and out of each episode, they cut up 20 videos out of it.
Yeah.
Like reels.
Yeah.
So there'll be some reels of you talking today that, I'll send you and you can post and stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool deal, to get to do that, because I don't have time to manage posting and all. Yeah, it's great. So, and it's 60 seconds.
And
from
like
my
you
house.
say, it's like a podcast or, you have to build up a following. I know.
Oh yeah, it's going to take some time.
It don't happen overnight. Yeah. Let me turn this off. You don't. It's like you need to be regular. That's what I've seen. It's
yeah.
Don't like do one now and then one 6 months and then 2 weeks after that. It's almost like the more regular you are, the better you do. But what do I know?
Well, the lady Christine that's got that judgy podcast.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then she got arrested, and that was a whole mess. Yeah, that was wild to watch. But so we'll get started. So today we have Councilman Kevin Bratcher on the show. Kevin was a state legislator for 28 years.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
28 years. Before that, you were in the Navy. And then now, for about a year, you've transitioned to Metro Council. Right. So just focusing on those local issues.
Yeah, and I'm finding that it's not always local issues. When you have a city the size of Louisville, all kinds of interesting things sneak in. Like we had a long debate, the longest since I've been there, the other night, on masks for ICE agents, or law enforcement. So, and that belongs at the federal level, or at least the state level, but it made its way to the metro level.
Interesting. And I want to get into that. I do want you to tell me a little bit, because you and I've been friends for quite some time, and I don't think I've ever heard you talk a little bit about what you did before you were a state representative, and how you kind of got into that.
Well, I was in the Navy through the 80s, and I went in completely oblivious to politics, just didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And when you were in the Navy, when you're in the military under Ronald Reagan, you became a Republican, because he treated the military really well in the 80s. So I became a Republican, and I've been one ever since. And then when I got out, there was a state rep position out in Valley Station in Okolona. That's where I lived at the time. And the Democrat there was always unopposed, and a few of us in the general area, Republicans, there wasn't a Republican club, it wasn't big enough, but just acquaintances. We said, it's a shame somebody doesn't at least put their name on the ballot and give the people a choice. Mm-hmm. And by golly, we had a little pulling straws ceremony, and the short straw is going to run. It was me and a guy and a girl, a lady.
Really? You literally drew straws?
We literally drew straws. And I did not draw the short stick. She did. And she said, I'm not running. So, yeah, she didn't want to do it. And I did it. Long story short, this was 1996. And you were probably still in school, high school or something, but it was a long time ago. And the person that I was running against 3 weeks before the election had like 26 counts of forgery and fraud, and it was all over the news. He was a big shot in the county government at the time, and he was going to run for state representative. And everybody thought he would win. I thought he would win. I was walking. That's about all. I couldn't raise money at the time. I wasn't well known enough.
Knocking on doors.
Just a name on the ballot, but I did a lot of knocking on doors. And but he got in trouble, and it was all over TV in the local area, and I won. And I said, well, the good Lord put me here. I'm going to stay as long as he wants me here, and I've enjoyed every minute of it since.
Yeah.
28 years in the legislature as a state representative. And then when Robin Engel retired, I thought that's a spot there open for Metro in the Fern Creek area, and I love Fern Creek. Mm-hmm. And I ran, and here I am.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you started out over at Valley Station, Okolona area. So when you moved, I assume you moved at
Well,
some
I went
point.
through 3 redistricting, and they kept trying to get me out of the Valley Station area. The Democrats were, and it wasn't vicious or anything, but they wanted, at first they thought they could beat me, and they didn't. A couple elections, then they said, well, let's draw him out. And I had, in 2022, we had a map drawn, and they literally put a circle around my house in Valley Station, and then a straight shot all the way to Fern Creek, and it opened up there, and it was a gerrymander. But I didn't mind, and I just I won that, and then just moved to Fern Creek.
Gotcha. And so you just.
But I was through 3 or 4 redistrictings, and each time they kept moving me more east.
Okay. I was wondering how that happened because, that's not your district now. You're not close to that at all. So I was wondering how you inched your way over. I was like, did you move? But that makes sense.
Each time it moved more east, and now it's just. Now the state rep seat is just basically Fern Creek proper and parts of J-Town.
Yeah, and that's where I lived for a really long time until I moved. And so every 2 years you had to run an election for 28 years. Mm-hmm. You had to knock on door. You had to do the same thing for 28 years.
Right.
How difficult was that? I just couldn't imagine having to do that. I watch a lot of my friends that are state legislators and, I know the Senate, you only have to do it every 4 years, but when you're a House representative, it's every 2 years. And so it's like you're constantly in an election, like you're the whole time, like it doesn't really stop, right?
Right, yeah.
So how was that? I mean, that's got to be tough.
Well, the first few times it was really difficult because I was a full-time teacher too at the time. The state rep doesn't pay enough for a full job. And so I did 20 years as a tech school teacher while I was a state rep. But you're right, every 2 years, in the first few years, it was pretty vicious campaigns ran against me. And I survived one, Dave Stingle, if you remember him, he was a very popular Commonwealth's attorney, and he came after me one time. I had some really close ones. But eventually, with all like state legislators, either a rep or a senator, you keep winning, then they back off because they know they can't beat you. And so you get a few unopposed here and there, and it makes it easier. But yeah, you're in constant fundraising mode. Mm-hmm. Constant.
Yeah. I think that's that would be the hardest part for me is constantly being.
It was hard for me. It still is.
Yeah, I imagine. And as Metro Council, how often do you all have to run there? Every 2 years as well?
That's 4 years.
Every 4. Okay, so it lightened up on you a little bit.
3 more years, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. And I know a lot of people want to move to the Senate just for that reason alone. Like, I don't have to run a campaign constantly, right? You kind of have a little bit of a break. But I didn't know you were an educator. I didn't know that about you.
Well, I taught tech school, AutoCAD, and I was an education supervisor. And, I loved it, and I retired in, when was it, 2013. And it was hard when you have a full-time job because I taught a lot of weekends, like every weekend while I was teaching, all day Saturday, most nights, like, when they would adjourn for the day in Frankfurt around 4:30, I would Zoom to Louisville and teach night classes. So
Wow.
I had to keep that going. And I was a young man then. I don't know if I could do it today, but I was young, and it was just a lot of fun. And I kept the seat. And I couldn't go to a lot of, get-togethers and events like you hold and stuff, or meetings. I had to skip out on a lot of that. But after I retired from teaching and was a full-time state legislator, I could go to a lot of them.
I was going to ask, how did doing that help you be a good legislator and understanding the issues on the ground? Because that's a huge part of it, right?
Sure.
And you do a good job of that. Like, I feel like you've always done, like, you really try to understand people and truly understand what's going on. You're not just out here making decisions for people without trying to gain understanding. So how did that help contribute to your, being successful at the policy part?
Well, when you're elected to a policy position, whether it's Metro or a legislature or whatever, everything in your past is a part of your education, because you know as well as I do, Elena, policy making can be, one day you're talking about dog vaccinations, the next day you're talking about the death penalty. I mean, it's just a broad. And, you bring a lot of the things in your past with you, whether it's I was teaching or, your life story. I mean, you'd be a great legislator. You look what you would bring to the table, just your life story, because nobody hopefully just sits in the basement and anymore, you wonder, but most people have life experiences, and being a legislator, you put those experiences to work.
Yeah.
Because as well as I do, we touch many, many people in many spheres of life out there.
Yeah.
So you bring what you bring what you've learned and try to do the best you can. And then when you don't know, you sit down and try to understand.
Yeah. And that's kind of how you and I met, right? Is you were trying to gain an understanding of, substance use and mental health and reentry and incarceration. And, there was all this conversation and policies being made and passed. And you really just kind of wanted to, understand, like, help me understand what's happening here, because, utilizing people that are experts in that area.
Yeah.
So, I've always appreciated that about you. One thing I did want to ask you is, like, so being in the legislature for 28 years, I bet things changed a lot. And how different is it from back then to, the way it was when you left last year? Like, I bet it's drastically different, right?
Well, there's a lot of practical things, because when I first was in the legislature, we didn't have computers. Computers were something that sat over in a far corner of an office somewhere. And in 96, mid-90s, computers were still kind of a novelty, and so we had big books on our desks, and when somebody was on the floor or in committee and referred to a law, we all had to get those books out and look it up. You talk about cumbersome. And also, you didn't have... when I very first got there, we didn't even have offices. All the offices were in the basement of the annex, and it's all cubicles. And you had all these people in cubicles. Now, I got there at the very end of that. So, but then we got those nice offices in the annex, the legislature basically.
So what was up there if there weren't your offices?
They were cabinet offices.
Oh.
Yeah, and then the legislature finally... there's a whole story on legislative independence before, back in the 70s and 80s and all the way back to the Daniel Boone days, the governor told the legislature what to do. And then around 1980 and through the 80s and through the 90s and up till today, the legislature started taking more and more of its power, so to speak. And because the legislature on its own as a body is the most powerful entity in the state, bar none. The governor, whatever. The legislature can do anything if it gets together, almost anything. Can't do anything unconstitutional, but I mean, you could change the capital from Frankfurt to London, Kentucky if you want to, just like that.
Yeah.
But
because it's the legislative body makes the laws, the executive and the judicial branch carry them out. That's
right.
they execute the laws that you all create. And I think a lot of people forget that, right? When you look back at old social studies class and civics class and how you learn that. But the legislative branch makes the laws. The executive branch carries them out. But now we've kind of gotten into like, there's a lot of lobbying and things that take place from other branches that,
Yeah, well, they all three, judicial, legislative, and executive, they all have their portion of the government. They're all equal, but on certain things, they have, jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And the big thing about the legislature is it determines where the money goes.
Yeah.
The budget. And that is, very, very powerful, But what has changed is we've become more independent. It used to be literally where the governor would get up every morning during session. Now, this is before me, but back in the 70s, and I've just heard these stories. He'd write down, I want this bill passed, and this bill passed. Send it to the speaker or the president of the Senate, and they'd say, okay, sir, and do it. And there was no independence. And it was John Y. Brown when he became governor, and he wanted to spend a lot of his time, if you remember. He was married to Miss America, and he spent a lot of his time in New York and L.A., so he was like, legislature needs to do its job, I do my job, and it started gaining independence from there. So that's changed a lot because each year and now you can see, whether you like it or not, I mean, the governor and the legislature don't really get along right now. So it's very independent, the legislature.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch the sort of the friction between the two branches, the legislative and the executive branch of government. And speaking of like the whole party, the majority was flipped. And what year was that? And then that was before I even started really being a part of Frankfurt. So, but I guess the majority was the Democratic Party up until 2016.
Well, for 100 years, the Democrats had the House of Representatives till 2016. And then they had the Senate for like 80 years until the year 2002, I think. But the Senate became Republican around 2000, and then the House became fully Republican and our majority in 2016. And those two chambers are now fully supermajority Republican, and and then the governor's Democrat. So yeah, it was 2016. I was there when it happened.
Yeah,
and it sure has changed a lot of things.
Yeah. What do you think? How did that happen? What do you think contributed to that? Like, did more
Donald Trump?
Oh, okay.
That was his. He flipped a lot of people, Democrats or those that just didn't bother to run across the nation. You've seen that since. You weren't involved in 2016, but you would have seen the big sea change. And it gave Republicans in certain areas like Valley Station, where I was one of the very few Republicans that ever won in Valley Station. Me and Bill Lott was always Democrat. Well, now it's solid red. And it's Trump country, all over the state. And that's really one of the big things. Plus, here's another thing. Mitch McConnell came out around 2014 and 2015, and he got Jonathan Schell, our current agriculture commissioner, and he was in the legislature at the time. And they come up with a plan, and they said, we want a good member, a candidate in every district in Kentucky. Because before, even if there, say, was a Republican wave, there wouldn't even, there'd be so many unopposed Democrats that they wouldn't anyway, right?
Okay.
So they said, and that's one of the things that me and some of the others took our marching orders, and we said, let's go find candidates in the 100 state rep districts and help them win. And by golly, we did. And we flipped it real quick. It went from like 44 Republicans out of 100 to 58 overnight, one election, 2016.
So I was wondering, like, do you think that, what you're saying is that more Republicans ran and won. Do you think there was a lot of Republicans that changed parties as well? Because we have been seeing that a little bit lately
That's happened.
too, right?
I don't know how much it was happening in 2016, but whether you love him or hate him, Donald Trump has changed the landscape of politics.
Yeah.
From dog catcher up to president. I mean, he has influenced so much. And he has really got the attention of the middle class.
Yeah, yeah.
In a lot of states, flipped.
Well, I know, like, a lot of folks in Kentucky and in the South, you think of like the old Southern Democrats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like an old Southern Democrat, kind of what those values were for that party of people.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like we don't really have that anymore, right?
Mm-mm,
like
we don't.
The old Southern Democrats really moved over into the Republican Party for the most part, right? And so, because there was more of a spectrum, I guess, of even Democrat and Republican over the years. It was, there was left, right, center, and now it's like very polarized, like where, so I feel like there's been a lot of change, and we saw Robin Webb, Senator Webb, she, kind of.
I served with Robin for a long time, and she was always kind of a moderate Democrat.
Yeah, yeah.
And she bucked horns with her party several times. I saw that. And, and she finally flipped,
Yeah, yeah. But it really has been interesting to watch because I started coming around Frankfurt around 2018. Because, I was managing programs and all that other stuff and kind of got pulled into advocacy and,
Well, you've been good at it.
Well, thank you. And so when I got there, I've only known it as being sort of a majority Republican legislature. So, when I would hear stories of it used to not be that way, I just would think like, I couldn't
When
imagine
I came there,
it.
it was super majority Democrat.
Right. I
So
just
I
couldn't
saw
imagine
the
that.
whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And what the Democrats are complaining to the Republicans of today, I can honestly say the Democrats did it to the Republicans
Right.
30 years ago, and many times even more blatantly. This was before everybody had cell phones and could record each other. Some Democrats, and not all, and I don't want to bash my Democrat friends, but there was a lot of them that were really vicious,
Yeah.
and not all, but and they had the right to do it. They were the majority, super majority.
Yeah.
And they knew it, and they took it. And you remember I was telling you how they kept redistricting me out? Mm-hmm. Well, they said they couldn't beat Bratcher, and I'm not bragging. This is just the truth. We can't beat Bratcher, so let's just keep gerrymandering on to the east. So each decade when they redrew all those 28 years and some special redistrictings in between, they kept gerrymandering. I mean, I had no power. I had to do whatever they said because they were the majority.
Yeah. And that's
And
the
they
way it
weren't
is.
all like overly unfair to me, but they played politics, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, that's the
That's
name of the game.
game.
It's the name of the game, right? You gotta play to win, and but I'm sure it's been super interesting to watch, that flip, which I'm always appreciative of having some sort of balance, right? I don't think everything should always be, one-sided. You always got to have some kind of competition or, and I sat in, there's a recovery housing ordinance. And so that was one of the first times I had ever went to a Metro Council meeting, was trying to listen to this recovery housing ordinance. Because, a lot of my clients and people we work with all are, have recovery housing. And so it's a huge issue that we talk about in the state. And I went to my first Metro Council meeting. And I think it was like right before you came. I think it was like right when you were kind of coming out of the House and you were going into Metro Council. And watching the dynamics of how Metro Council is ran versus, say, a committee hearing in the state legislature was very different. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like...
Oh, there is quite a bit of difference. Mm-hmm. And, there's more parity now.
Right.
And, one party can't get over on the other one. Is the super word and super majority is the key. When you have the super majority, I mean, there's just no voice for the super minority. But, you know, when it's at parity, real close to balance, you know, you have to work with the other side.
Do you
And
appreciate that? You like it?
I've
I
really
appreciated
enjoyed
it.
the Metro Council. And I've got a lot of great Democrat friends that I work with. And I had Democrat friends in Frankfurt, but it's like you just didn't need them, you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
these you do need. So you spend time, you talk about policies but there are still differences. There's no doubt about it. But it's, you know, it's just different. I've loved both chambers. I love the legislature the years I put in there. And so far, I'm loving the Metro Council.
Yeah. I appreciate that parity that I witnessed in there, right? It seemed like there was just more of a camaraderie. You know, like you said, you're going to have a difference of opinion, but you are sort of forced to listen to the other side, and both parties had a voice. And it was just really kind of refreshing to watch, you know, coming from watching the committee hearings in the state legislature. And I feel like there's not as much time spent complaining or showboating or, you know, things like that, because there's more like effectiveness, I guess, you know, and it was really cool to watch that. And I was like, man, what a difference. Just going to one, you know, committee hearing, I was like, this is such a huge difference from, you know, being in the legislative committee hearings. So it was just really interesting to me. And, but I do want to hear about this mask. You all had a huge hearing last week. There was a lot of people that showed up, and it was really trying to mandate, I guess, federal officers on the local level. Is that what?
Well, that was the essence of it. It was basically, it was an ordinance that said that law enforcement cannot wear a face covering mask. And, you know, ICE does that in other cities, and I haven't necessarily, I know they're here in Louisville, but I haven't seen them personally. But, you know, they cover their face up because they don't want to get doxxed, because, you know, they've had some serious threats, you know. But anyway, the J.P. Leninger, who is a Democrat socialist on the Metro Council, proud of the socialists. It used to be something you would, you know, run from, but he's a very proud Democrat and a super guy and very bright. I mean, there's no doubt that he's an intelligent, well-spoken individual that understands the issues. I just disagree with everything he stands for. That's all. Other than that, he's a fine guy. But he pushed the ordinance that law enforcement should never wear a face mask. And we got into like a 4-hour debate on it. And I voted, we as all Republicans voted against. It was a ban, and we voted against the ban. And the Democrats voted for it, but there was one Democrat that came over and it passed.
Yeah.
It failed. I'm sorry. The ban failed.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's a common thing in policy, that where there's sort of the moral or the philosophical issue of a policy, right? But then you have sort of the technical and constitutional aspect of a policy. And a lot of times it looks like you're morally or philosophically against a policy, but in some instances, it's like we're not the body to determine this, right? Even if you agree with it or disagree with it. And I really do see that a lot, where, you know, even if you do believe something should happen, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to be the people to determine that. Right. And I've seen that a lot working in policy the past few years.
Sure, yeah. A lot of people want to make a statement, what they believe in. You know, JP is obviously a very left-wing person, and he wanted to make a statement, because even if that ban had passed, if the ordinance had passed, federal agents aren't going to do what the city of Louisville tells them to do. They're going to wear what they want to wear.
Right.
And what are you going to do, have LMPD arrest a federal agent on wearing a mask? It's just not going to happen. It had no business being there. But he thought it was a good debate, and it was a good debate. It's just, it really is not appropriate for the Metro Council. But, you know, both sides do that. And I've done it. I have done that before. You want to make a statement, so.
And that's fair. And I appreciate that you can be, you know, like, hey, this is part of it. It's what we do. You know, we know that it probably isn't the best policy or the best place for it, but we're still going to raise the issue so we can get time on the floor or wherever
Yeah.
to talk about it and discuss it. And
And let everybody know where you stand on something.
yeah.
That's just part of it. Policy making is a very adversarial thing.
Mm-hmm.
And don't come in it thinking, I had my family member once said, like, why can't everybody just get along? And I said, when everybody gets along, that's when you need to worry. Because no matter what you believe, one side is always keeping watch on the other side. And when you're an elected official, you have so much authority. I mean, you have no boss other than the people. Every 2 years or 4 years, they tell you if you're fired or you can continue if you want to run for reelection. And you have so much autonomy and power, lack of a better word, that you need oversight. I mean, one party keeps track of the other party.
Checks and balances.
Checks and balances is very important, because otherwise, you'll take off and nobody will see what you're doing. And if you're doing something unethical, then you won't be called out on it.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's very important to have a two-party system. I know people don't like it when, like in Congress in D.C., they're very close to parity, so they're constantly fighting for one inch above the other. And it can wear thin on you. I can't hardly watch 24/7 news anymore. It just drives me bananas. I just look at the headlines and move on, because, I mean, they'll take one issue, and whether it's CNN or Fox, and they'll just talk 2 hours on it,
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is it drives everybody crazy. But, if you look at a dictator country, they don't have a lot of fighting back and forth. Like, say, Saddam Hussein, he would get his opponents up and take them outside and kill them. Here in America, which is fully open, it's wide open, we should be thankful that both sides are fighting for a policy.
I agree, because if you agree with one side or the other 100% of the time, then you're just not really thinking for yourself, right? Regardless of which party you're in, like every single piece of policy or every topic or situation, you can't always agree with that. There has to be the checks and balances. It's super important. And I mean, there's been things you and I haven't always agreed on, right? But we've been able to talk about it. And, House Bill 5 was a huge bill that passed. And
What was that one?
Oh, gosh, the Safer Kentucky Act.
Yeah.
House Bill 5 passed a couple years ago. And that's kind of what you and I started talking on, because you were really trying to understand, how to help people, not just lock them up or whatever. And
well, the homeless issue was, you can't keep letting people sleep on the sidewalk. That's not compassion. If you have to arrest them, and I'm not advocating this, I'm just saying, if you have to arrest them and put them in jail, at least they have running water and a bed to sleep on. Now, I'm not saying arrest homeless people. I'm just saying, what is so great about allowing somebody to continue to sleep outside when there are beds, and if they'll get with it in the program, and I know it's easier said than done. A lot of people don't want to get with the program. But we just cannot say, well, until we find you a nice house, we're just going to let you keep sleeping in the ditch. I could not look at that as compassion. I wouldn't want my worst enemy out there. Why would I want somebody that I really have compassion for continue to let them sleep out there? They need some tough love and get with it. And I know that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But that is going to have to be what happens.
Yeah. But there was a lot in that bill. That was the first omnibus bill that I had ever worked on. It was such a huge bill. It was really overwhelming. But I really started talking with you and Rep. Jared Bauman and everybody in Jefferson County that worked on that. And, we all discussed it and talked about it. And there were some changes made. There were some that weren't, and that bill ultimately passed. And, have you all talked? Have you all seen do you all feel like that was a success, or do you feel like it's been implemented well, or that?
I think it's been a great success thus far. crime is going down, other than juvenile crime, which my bill was to open up a juvenile detention center. It's still not open. But crime has went down, and I'm not taking victory laps. I know it's a constant thing.
Just talking about implementation.
A lot of it forced the metro government to start looking for some serious solutions on what to do with homeless. There's still homeless out there, but there's a lot of them that have been turned around. I've heard that, and you have police resource officers now instead of just running up with a gun and a badge and arresting. They, needle them until they go do something good for themselves.
Yeah. And I hear there's some new like shelters and places that are popping up around some.
Yeah, we just passed an ordinance the other night that it's going to make it easier for churches to open up, take in homeless. Yeah, that was Khalil and Betsy Rue's bill. Khalil Bashton.
And that passed?
It passed.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I know that there's folks that are sort of collecting data right now on House Bill 5 and looking at like, okay, what impact has this had and things like that on like the arrests for the street camping and things like that. But man, there was a lot in that bill. That was an overwhelming year in the legislature for me. But a cool thing that kind of came out of that is there was House Bill 5, which was it was a crime bill that focused on a lot of crime. But, on the flip side of that, you also jumped in and helped out with Clean Slate, right? Mm-hmm. Which, I think speaks to your balance and your character as a legislator, right? Because it's, I think a lot of people can have the perception on anybody that was behind House Bill 5, which I was not. I was opposed to House Bill 5. I was not in favor of it. It was going to pass, so we were working with everybody trying to make amendments and things like that. But regardless, like you and I came together and worked on Clean Slate, which helped people with their automated expungement once they've, served their time and all the things.
Yeah, and I thought I would just get that passed like I had gotten the clean record the year before, if you remember, with where like if you're arrested and you go to they arrest you and you go to jail and you find out that you were the wrong person or that you're acquitted, that and then you're set free, that record used to just stay on you. That incident would stay on your record.
Right.
And it would look bad. And I passed the bill with the help of Iris Wilbur and some other, I forgot the group that helped me, but it was like
acquittal and dismissal. It was, I'm pretty sure like the Smart Justice Advocates
That's
helped out with that. Yeah. But it was, if you're acquitted, if you got an acquittal or a dismissal, it still stayed on your record.
Yeah,
so when
but not anymore.
Right. And so that it's an automated thing too, right? So people don't have to go and apply or pay an attorney and say, hey, right now in Kentucky, and a few years ago, Senator Jimmy Higdon, we worked with him and we were able to pass a great expungement bill that allowed my husband to get an expungement because he had a trafficking marijuana charge for a little bag of marijuana in like 1996. And so because it was a trafficking charge, he was never going to get that off his record. And we worked with Senator Higdon. There was a bill that was passed that allowed him to get that expungement, which changed his life, right? Because he couldn't even take our kids on a field trip, like nothing, over something he did in college. And so right now in Kentucky, the expungement process is that it has to be 5 years after you have had any charges or convictions. And after that 5 years, then you can apply for an expungement. You have to pay the fees. A lot of times you have to hire an attorney. You have to get with Kentucky State Police. You have to get all of your charges basically from the people. You have to give your list of charges to the people that already have your charges and, apply. And then there's discretion from prosecutors and judges, which is fine. But what we found is, there's 100 and some thousand Kentuckians that are eligible for an expungement, but they can't get one. And so that's where we are in Kentucky. And there's a national organization called the Clean Slate Initiative that is, I think, in 13 states. Chicago or Illinois just passed theirs a few weeks ago. 13 states have passed a clean slate bill that provides that automated and automatic expungement, to where we're not saying who is eligible or how long they're eligible or any of that. It's just when you are, you don't have to go through the red tape. It's an automated process. And Kentucky is getting a new court system to where it's possible for an automated process. And so we're working, with AOC and Kentucky State Police and those folks just to make sure that that process is possible when the time comes. And you filed the clean slate bill for us in the 2024 session. Was that your last session?
Yes. But, I came off that acquittal dismissal bill, and I got that through as a slam dunk, and I thought I'd get that. Man, I tell you what, people came out of the woodwork fighting against that. And the clerks against it really was shocking to me, because they just didn't want to deal with it at all. I could tell they didn't even want to talk about it. But, I think Jason Nemus and some of the others, Brandon Storm, are going to get it tackled. That's what I hear.
Yeah, we're definitely planning on refiling this year, but something really interesting happened, though. So we went into the committee hearing that morning for the bill to be heard in judiciary, and you were on that committee, and I think Representative Daniel Elliott was the chair, and so the bill was on the agenda, and we're all going in to sit down and get ready to hear this bill, and we get a text that it's being pulled from the agenda because the Chief Justice at the time was coming in to testify against the bill. So that...
Yeah, there was just, it like I said, they came out of the woodwork against it. It was, and it never really got anywhere, but that's the thing. A lot of good bills, it takes a while to get something passed. You just got to keep hammering away every session. That's the beauty about the legislature that we don't have in the metro. There's good and bad in both. But in the legislature, you start every session like it's the first day of everything, and then that last day it's gone, and you have to start all new the next session. In the Metro Council, there's no beginning and no ending when it comes to policy.
Yeah. How does that work? So you all have committees in Metro Council. So you have committees, and I assume you have your own committee hearings and the people that sit on that committee. And then you have a full Metro Council meeting, right? And I assume there's someone that makes that I know there's the chair of the whole council, right? And so do they make that schedule, and sort of, do they make all those decisions?
Well, yeah, he's responsible for it. They hash it out, but it's usually 1 week for committees, and then the next week is the session, the Metro session, Thursday night. So it's every other week deal.
Oh, okay. So you all kind of have a running schedule. So
yeah,
committee hearings are, and so
they're scheduled to the public, and like in Frankfurt, it's like the chairman says, "Well, we're going to hear something tomorrow at 2:00," just out of the blue, and then he can cancel it at 1:30. But here, that planning and zoning is going to meet every other Tuesday at 1 p.m. at City Hall. And unless there's a really good reason, they won't cancel it.
Right. So every committee meets a certain day of the week at a certain time.
Every other week.
And then every Thursday night you have a full hearing.
Every other Thursday night.
Yeah. And so when someone files an ordinance, I know like at the state level, like you said, there's only a specific amount of time that you can file a piece of legislation. It has to be passed by a specific amount of time.
There's none of that in the metro.
So someone can file an ordinance and it just sit there?
Funny you say that. That's another one of the big differences. You can table it. There are some that have been tabled, but 90% of them, if I filed one today, unless there's some major reason, it's going to be in front of the committee the next time the committee meets.
So it's that fast.
It's that fast.
Okay.
And then once it passes that committee, it goes to the very next Metro session for a up or down vote.
Wow.
And here's another thing: even if it fails at the committee level, in Frankfurt, if it fails at the committee bill, what happens? It's dead.
Done.
If it fails at the Metro committee level, it's still brought to the Metro Council.
Oh.
Really different.
Wow.
It just comes with an unfair, and even in Frankfurt, if a bill fails, if it passes with favorable expression.
Right.
If it fails committee with unfavorable expression, it's usually just dead for the whole session. And unless somebody really goes through the procedures to bring it back, you'd have to have leadership do that.
Yeah.
But at the Metro, if it fails with unfavorable expression, it's still heard the next session. So it doesn't really put the brakes on it like the legislature does.
So if you file a bill, it gets heard in committee and it did not pass committee. The next Metro Council meeting, they're still going to bring it up and hear it, and you're still going to vote on it again whole committee.
You're going to vote on it like the committee meeting didn't even meet.
And so I would say 99% of the time it's going to fail in the.
Well, the ICE ban passed committee, and it failed. That's inverted from what you're saying, but it's not always that case. I mean, there have been things fail committee that passed the Metro Council.
Gotcha. So if you file an ordinance and it passes committee, or say it does not pass, period, right? So it does not pass committee, it does not pass the full. How long do you have to wait before you file that policy again, before you file that ordinance?
I don't know that rule. I don't know if there's a time limit or not.
Because you would think there would be some instances where people would be so passionate about an issue that they just keep filing it.
It might be a 2-year. I know in planning and zoning things, if it fails, it's 2 years. I don't know if that's the entire ordinances or not.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I should know that.
And are you on planning and zoning committee?
Yes, and that's a whole nother set of rules. And
I imagine. That's probably the toughest committee in the Metro Council, right?
Well, it seems to be. I haven't been on that many, but it's a lot, and they have their own set of rules, and it's you have to, when you make amendments. I mean, it's a whole rabbit hole I could go down, but it is rather complicated, really.
Yeah,
but it takes a while to get used to it. It's got its own rhythm.
Yeah. Before we end, there's a couple of things I did want to touch on with you. And I know one of the big issues that I see you talk about a lot on social media is the traffic.
Yeah.
And I think is that a planning and zoning issue? And that's probably.
Well, it's a public works, transportation, Bardstown Road down towards the Bullitt County line, right in the middle of Fern Creek, is just a mess.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse. The biggest problem is like Bullitt, Nelson, and Spencer counties, West Spencer County, they're growing like weeds down there.
Yeah.
And there's only one way to get to Louisville. Or there's more ways, but the main way to get to Louisville is up through the
Mount Washington
Fern Creek
to Fern
the Gene
Creek.
Snyder.
Yeah.
And man, that's 2/3 of our traffic, and it's growing.
Yeah.
And then of course, Fern Creek is undeveloped. I mean, it's still a lot of areas that can be developed. And it's just heartbreaking to see how these developments are going without any input, any improvement in the infrastructure. There was a safety study, traffic and safety study that me and Senator Mike Nemes got into the legislature and Jimmy Higdon like 2 years ago to study how can we improve the safety and traffic of that stretch from Seatonville Road to Bullitt County on Bardstown Road. And people will say, you don't need to study, just go out there and look at it. Well, if you want federal money, you have to do a proper study.
Gotcha.
Because I get so many times, what are you doing studying everything? Well, the feds require it. They require a good study. Anyway, this study is like 6 months late, and it's just, but the developments keep getting approved, and it's frustrating. I know that's pretty parochial.
Well, but I mean, it's a valid issue, and I think we see it in other places too. I mean, I live out Brownsboro Road, and it's the same, right? So you got Crestwood and out in that county, and the main way in, right, is through Brownsboro Road, and then that gets into like the Paddock and Springhurst, which are major shopping areas, right? And so it's packed. I mean, I can go from just out right when you pull out of my neighborhood to my kid's school, which is a half a mile, and it take me 30 minutes, you know.
Yeah, it's everywhere, you know, and it's kind of a, you know, dilemma of we want growth. You want your thriving community. You want growth. You know, I've had friends in the legislature in Hazard and London, they say, we would love to have the stuff that you're complaining about.
Yeah.
You know, some places in the mountains, they just don't grow as fast as other areas. And they would love to have that. But then, you know, we've got a brand new emergency room. Baptist Health has one in Fern Creek. And if it's certain times of the day, there ain't an ambulance going to be able to get in there.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, you can always tell when an area is getting ready to go through a major development is when you see certain businesses pop up in that area, right? Because they do all their research. Like when you look at like an Orange Theory or a Starbucks or
Cookie Crumble.
Crumble Cookie, Nothing Bundt Cake. So like these franchises, they really do their homework on where do we want to go next? Where are we going to get the most bang for our buck? And so when you see those pop up, which you're seeing right there in Fern Creek where you're at.
All kinds.
Seven Brew
and
Coffee.
Publix is coming.
Yes. And so that's when you know, okay, we're under a major development right now. Like we're getting ready. And like you said, you know, being meaningful in how are we going to support the traffic and the people that are coming into this area is absolutely real, because you want the growth and you want all those great businesses and you want people to come to that area, but also you don't want people to not be able to get to work or ambulances to get in. And do you all have a solution? Like,
it's the biggest problem is getting the state of Kentucky transportation cabinet. You know, I wrote a letter to Andy Bashir because he's probably the only one that could come in and fix this.
Okay.
Of course, he's not going to spend time with Fern Creek, and that's not a bash on him. He's just got other bigger fish to fry. But, you know, Louisville has a lot of tax money that goes to Frankfort to spread across the state, and it don't get near what it sends. I think it gets about 40 cents back on every dollar it sends to Frankfort in the gas tax. And we need more infrastructure. And I was talking about the legislature is the strongest entity in this state. But when it comes to roads, that's where the legislature takes a back seat to the cabinet. The cabinet is they don't do the funding, but they do the money will go here, the money go there, the execution part. And, you know, that's why I'm really going to work hard for a Republican governor like Jamie Comer, because I know him well, and that's really what we need is somebody in the cabinet or the governor to listen to our issues.
So as on the local level, as Metro Council, you're sort of at their mercy, right? The transportation cabinet.
They don't hardly listen to us.
Right. So you all have not much power when it comes to getting the transportation cabinet to support you, depending on who's in office or who's head of the cabinet. And then you all also ask for money in the state budget too, right? Don't counties or cities get money in the state budget for certain things?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you all work in tandem with the legislators to get money in the budget? How does that work?
Well, you keep them happy. And
That's
you meet
step
with
one.
them. Yeah, you meet with them as much as you can. And hopefully, you know, the state's sitting on a pretty large surplus right now. Hopefully some of that money can come to Louisville. And that's kind of what we're working on. But I trust, you know, Jason Nemus and Speaker Osborne and President Stivers, you know, they know Louisville is a good place. So
yeah.
And they've always done well for Louisville.
So you essentially have to lobby the legislators, right?
Yeah.
To be able
the mayor does a lot of that.
The mayor does a lot.
The mayor spends a lot of time with the legislature.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because everything flows together,
It
you
does.
know. So I was just curious about that because I do know that, for roads or transportation, I know there's always a line item in the budget that goes to certain counties for that. And you all have to kind of get in there and plead your case and say, we need this money for this infrastructure in this area. How can we get that money in the budget? So I assumed it was a little bit of lobbying and relationship building on your all's
Yeah,
part.
elected officials do a lot of lobbying.
Yeah.
And I work with the Mayor Greenberg, and I think he's done a great job. You know, some things we disagree on, but overall, I think he's done great for Louisville. And he has a good relationship with Jason Nemus and the legislature here, the legislators of Louisville, and they meet frequently. And I think there's going to be some good things happen in Louisville in the future.
Yeah.
And when it comes to your industry, I think that we have. I think there's going to be a lot of money flow into rehabs and stuff.
Good.
Don't you think so?
Yeah, I do. I do.
I want to thank you before we end up here. You're one of the best lobbyists for that industry. Is it industry or what's the right word? Organizations. You do such a good job, and everybody loves you. They talk about how great you are to work with, and you don't get mad and run out when you don't get everything you want, and you know that the name of the game is compromise. That seems like a bad word these days, but that's really what it is. It's you have to give and take and sit down with people and come to an understanding and try to do the best you can, and you do that really well.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really not about me.
Sure.
And that's what I have to keep that in mind because I really advocate and speak up for a population of people that, I know have been through the same things that I've been through. And so, but, I never in my life thought that I would work in politics. Never, ever, ever. I mean, I never voted. I never knew anything, about politics. And I went to vote for the first time, on my 7-year sobriety date. And that was a shit show. I had the Herald Leader there and Spectrum News, and the lady didn't want to let me in to vote. And I had gotten a pardon by Governor Bevin, and not with all the other people that got not the bad pardon, not that, but long before he even left office, I had got a pardon. But, I just never knew anything about politics. So just the fact that I've built all these wonderful relationships with all these legislators, and I understand the process, and it just has been wild to me that I don't even know how I got here. I'm a social worker, and I was going to work with people in recovery, in a treatment center. And, here I am trying to help, influence things on the policy level. So I just appreciate that. And, I love that we don't agree on everything. I think that is where the magic happens, right? Whenever you agree all the time, I mean, I think it's less about disagreements and more about trust and, knowing the person and, knowing what they stand for and what they believe in and appreciating that, right? Appreciating the differences.
Right.
So,
and when you lobby, and that's why you're such a good lobbyist, is for your issues, is you have to be somebody that's straightforward, trustful, and don't try to finagle. And I've seen some, and they don't last long in the lobby area. You have to be, Hollywood and the TV shows have made lobbyists to be the bad guys, but they play such an important role. Like we were talking earlier, you come to an elected office, one day you're dealing with pets, the next day you're dealing with murderers, and you got everything in between, roads, and who's going to be even though you have a taste of that through your life, who's going to be a subject matter expert? A lobbyist. But that lobbyist has to be straightforward, not try to finagle anything, just come and say, this is what I want, and what can I get, and let's make sure it's all on the up and up. And I've worked well with many lobbyists, and they're needed.
yeah. Well, we really bridge the gap between the issue and the legislator, right? Because like you said, you got 1,000 things thinking, and so when we come in your office, we're like, hey, Brett Bratcher, this is my issue and what, and you're more likely to work with someone that you know what you're going to get. You can trust that person. They're not, I've been in rooms where everybody agrees and then we walk out and the next thing you know, they're trying to kill your bill over here, on the side. And so it's pretty wild to watch, but I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes in this space already and not read policies thoroughly and been a part of things that I really that passed that I probably shouldn't have been in favor. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes already, but it's a huge learning experience. And the best part is getting to build relationships and meet people like you and, become friends and be able to learn each other's issues and how we can support each other and all that. So it's been the best part.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed working with you through the years.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. And this has been such a good conversation. Like we've just been talking. It's been so good to learn all the Metro Council stuff and what you're doing. And I just appreciate you. And I'm so glad that you get to focus on the local issues for the most part now. And you did such a great job in the state legislature for so long. And I just think Kentucky's a better place because of you. Even though we don't agree on everything, I believe that about you. And I believe that your heart's in the right place and that you really try to do things the right way, regardless of who agrees or disagrees with your values or whatever. You're just a great guy. So I appreciate you.
Thanks. I appreciate you, Elena.
Yeah, for sure.